Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
You have been at the Sunday school before? Yes. Or never been in Buddhist school, no? At these classes. But never been studying Buddhism. No? Those who have studied Buddhism anywhere, raise your hand. You have not studied, eh?
No, I haven't.
Hmm?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So I think, were you here yesterday for that sermon? You are not here. Anyone who was here yesterday? You were here. Then the important thing is to understand why people have a thing called a religion. You should know that. Why do people need religion? It's very important. One very important thing that you should know and also be aware of is that when you are born into this world, you are born ignorant. You don't know anything. Do you understand that? Do you want to disagree with that? No one, eh? So if you are born ignorant, in ancient times, people didn't have any proper education like today. There were no schools. And so they remain ignorant till they die. Every person who is born is going to die. That you know. Huh? And not only that you are going to die, if you don't die when you are a child or something, you will begin to grow old. And then, of course, ultimately you die. This is the problem. And from the time you are born, what do you do? Every time, every second, you will be breathing in and breathing out. If you don't breathe, if you stop breathing, what happens? You die. And so, the other thing is that you also need food. As a small child, you might be drinking only milk, but as you grow up, you begin to eat and taking food. Now, this is something that is going on not only among human beings, even animals breathe and take food. If they don't do that, they die. In other words, we are living dependent on certain conditions. If those conditions are not present, we die. It is like a flame. If you if you light a candle, that will continue. That flame will continue only as long as there is oxygen in the air. If there is no oxygen in the air, that flame will go out. And another important condition is that there must be wax in that candle. When the wax is all finished, again the flame goes out. So like that, our life is also like that. Not only our life, the life of all the animals, the life of all the trees, the plants, everything is like that. All living things means they are dependent on conditions. This is the most important thing to understand. And this is why that person called Charles Darwin, who spoke about the theory of evolution, what did this person find? That what we call life is a struggle for existence. We are all struggling to exist, but we can't really continue to exist because every person ultimately dies. That struggle for existence is really a failure, because if the person dies, we exist only for a short while. However much we try to prevent death, we might, when we fall sick, we might go to the hospital or get the person, a doctor to operate you, or maybe get a heart transplant or some other transplant, still you die. You can't live forever. This is the fear that is present in all living beings. The fear of death. This is the basic fear in life. And not only there is the struggle to exist, there is also so many things happening in the world where we have to face death. If there is a war which is really created by other human beings, then if we get caught in a bomb or something like that, we die. You see, even although we are struggling to exist, we begin to fight and quarrel, and as a result, we might kill ourselves or we might kill the other people. This is a problem in the world. And because of this fear in life, that people try to seek help outside. And people in ancient times didn't know why there is rain, why there is thunder, why there is lightning, or hurricanes, or tornadoes, or earthquakes. These are all things that can kill you. And people thought this world must be governed by some invisible spirits, and the good spirits were called gods, and the bad spirits were called devils. So they started praying to the gods, or trying to get friendly with the devils by giving them gifts, making sacrifices. And this is how this thing called religion started. You see, today, people have at least become more intelligent and more able to protect themselves by various means like the scientific technology. We have ways of heating the house when it is cold. We have ways of manufacturing clothes when we are feeling cold. We can warm the house also. And when we want to travel, we can travel by a car or maybe even plane. We have a lot of convenience. But in spite of all this, what happens? We all have to die someday. There is the fear of death. We have not been able to overcome that. So this is why when people become frightened, they go to the church or go to the temple or go to the religious places and seek help in the gods. This is the problem. So religion has been a method of overcoming our fears. This is the important thing to understand. So religion has been, this is why we say, Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Are you familiar with that? Say, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Sangham Saranam Gacchami. That Saranam Gacchami means seeking refuge. You have heard that when in Sri Lanka there is trouble about wars and things like that, people run away from that country and take refuge. They come as refugees. Maybe some people came to Australia as refugees, or maybe going to England or America or any other country as refugees. That means people seeking help and protection. So in a similar way, people take refuge in gods or devils, or maybe seeking refuge in the Buddha or the Dhamma or the Sangha. That taking refuge is what we do to religion. Religion serves a purpose to seek help when we are frightened. Now, when a child is frightened, what does the child do? Run to the mother or to the father. That is also seeking refuge. You see, when that child grows old and becomes an adult, then the child realizes, now I am an adult, as powerful as my father or mother, but still I am frightened. Now, where is the refuge? The only refuge that they can go to is the God, or the devil, or the Buddha. Now, there is a difference between this seeking refuge in gods and seeking refuge in the Buddha. This is very important to understand. In ancient times, people thought that human beings are not able to help themselves. They had this habit of living with other human beings for protection. When one person is in trouble, another person can help, at least to some degree. But they thought that they have to find help in a supernatural being not a natural being. These supernatural beings were the gods and the devils. But no one had really seen a god or a devil. Unless, of course, they begin to hallucinate and see, dream about gods and devils. But otherwise, no one had really seen a god or devil. They only believe this. And the belief keeps them happy, at least for a while. But when we take refuge in the Buddha, we are really seeking refuge not in a supernatural being, but a natural being who is supernormal. Now, supernormal means what we really do is the Buddha pointed out that the human being can evolve. You have heard about the theory of evolution where animals began to evolve, and ultimately the highest evolved animal is the human being. The human being is the most evolved because the human being has a special thing that other animals don't have. What's the special thing? Anyone knows what this special thing is? Ability to think, that's right. The human being has this ability to think and reason out. And it is because of this ability that this thing called science developed. And they have been able to make certain instruments to help themselves. Because the human being also has this ability called tool making ability. The human being can make tools. And it is because of this tool making ability and using that thing called intelligence that they were able to make machines to do various things. But what the Buddha pointed out was, if the human being can purify the mind, by purifying the mind, it is possible to get certain psychic powers. And with these psychic powers, the human being is able to do things even without machines, with that psychic power. And during the time of the Buddha, there were human beings who had these psychic powers. Today we see in the movies a person called Superman. We have heard about it. Superman could fly in the air and do various things. Those are superpowers. But in actual fact, there were people during the time of the Buddha, that is more than 2,500 years ago, there were supermen who had psychic powers. They could fly, not with wings, but through the power of the mind. And also, they could even walk through a wall and even plunge into earth, like plunging into water. So there were people with psychic powers like that. Even before the Buddha was born, the Buddha only went one step further. And that was, now these supermen were evolved human beings who evolved, and that evolution of the human being is not a physical evolution. Like the biological evolution is physical, a change in the body. But here it is a change in the mind. It's a mental evolution. And the mental evolution is what makes them with the psychic power. And the Buddha went beyond, because he studied from the Superman at that time. There were two teachers called Alara and Uddhakarama Putra, who had evolved to a great level, but he had to go further to solve the problem of existence. Now the problem of existence is what Charles Darwin saw as the struggle for existence and the survival of the fittest. But that is also not a proper survival, because every individual has to die. And this is the biggest problem, the problem of existence. Now what the Buddha saw was, when the normal person is supposed to be conscious and awake, but that consciousness needs to become conscious of a world outside. That is, to be able to see, hear, smell, taste and touch. And that is the consciousness. But they are not fully conscious of what is going on inside your own body. When there is something wrong with your body, what do? You have to go to a doctor. And the doctor is supposed to know better about your body than you. That means you are not conscious of what is going on inside you. And when your mind is sick, what do? Again you have to go to the doctor. So that means you don't even know what is going on inside your mind. So the evolution of the human being is when you become conscious of what is going on inside your body and your mind. And that is what you do when you begin to meditate. Meditation is to become conscious of your own body and mind. And when you understand that properly, you begin to understand that the world that you are aware of is actually a creation of your own mind. Now some religions say that the world was created by God, but those are the primitive ideas that people had in ancient times. They thought there were supernatural beings controlling the world. But when the human being evolves to a high level, the human being becomes aware that the whole world that we are aware of is actually the creation of the mind. And today, the modern psychologists are aware of this. If you study a textbook on psychology and read about the theory of perception, you will understand how you perceive the world. That perception is really a mental process that creates the world. Now this is what the Buddha saw, because when he became aware of the mind and how the mind is creating the whole world that we are aware of. And ourselves itself, even what we think as the self, is also creation of our mind. And a very important thing to know about the mind is that the mind is not matter. There is a humorous verse where a person asks, what is the mind? And the answer is, no matter. And the person is asked, what is matter? And the answer is, never mind. You see? So that is, of course, the result of ignorance. But when the Buddha became aware of the mind, he saw that the mind is not an entity. What is an entity? When we speak about an entity, we are really speaking about something that occupies space and time. Matter, what we call matter, is an entity. Like this clock is an entity, and that occupies space, and it occupies time. Now, if you want to measure the space occupied by this, you can measure the length, breadth, and the height. And what do you get? What is it that you get by measuring the length, breadth, and height?
The volume?
The volume. Yes. The volume is simply the amount of space occupied by that object. Now, we can also measure the weight of this. And if we measure the weight, what can we get out of that? How much matter is inside that amount of space? And what do you call that? What? No. Density, right. So density is the amount of matter occupying that space. So you see, this is what an entity is. An entity is something that occupies space and also time. How long is that going to be there, occupying that space? We might put this here, then it is occupying another space. But the same amount of space, but the space is different. So there is a certain amount of time that will remain in that place. Maybe tomorrow it will be in another place. So you see, if you destroy that completely, then that will be the end of that. So everything that we call an entity is something that occupies space and time. Now, the mind, when you speak of the mind is not an entity like that. It doesn't occupy space or time. What is the mind? Now, if I hold my hand like this and then raise it, what happens? And I can put it down again. I can move this way, can move that way. What do you call that? Huh?
With
That is called an action. An action. Action is a thing that has a beginning, it has an end, and in between there is change. You see? So when I put my hand down, that is an action. It had a beginning, it was here, and end, it was here. And between the beginning and an end, there was change. So every activity has a beginning and end and change in between. So mind is a thing like that. It is an activity. The mind is an activity, and it is the activity of the body. There are three main activities that you call the mind. The Buddha used three words for that. Chitta, Mano, and Vijnana. These are three important words you should learn. Chitta, Mano, and Vijnana. Vijnana means seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. You have five senses. What are the five senses?
eye, ear, nose.
Huh?
Eye, ear, nose, taste, tongue, and the skin, or nerves.
No, the body, the whole body becomes the sense of it. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the body. So through these five senses, we begin to perceive, which is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Now, these five things, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, this is what is called vijnana, perception. Chakku vijnana is eye perception. Sota vijnana is ear perception. Gana vijnana is nose perception. Jivha vijnana is tongue perception. Kaya vijnana is body perception. Now, what we perceive through these five senses, they are all different. What we see with our eyes is a picture. What we hear is a sound. What we smell is a smell. What we taste is a taste. What we touch is some feeling of touch. And these don't really give us much. But these different data received through the senses, is called sense data, received through the different senses, are collected in the brain, because there are neurons carrying messages from the different senses into the brain. And the brain begins to think and create an object. When we see an object, we are really seeing what we have created in our mind. When we look at the clock, we don't really see the clock. we are only seeing some colors. When the eye is open, what we really see is color. We don't see objects. And what we hear is a sound. So it is the mind that is creating the object that we see. Okay. That's the important thing to understand. When a person paints a picture, what does that person do? The paint puts colors onto canvas or maybe paper, puts colors on the paper. But when we look at the colors, we create a picture in the mind. So in a similar way, when we open our eyes, what we see is simply color. And we create a picture out of it. So everything that we see is the creation of the mind. Now that process of creating things, that is called mano. Mano is the thinking part. And then, when we think about an object, we form a concept about an object. If someone comes here and shouts out, what happens? You interpret that with your mano. You interpret what was said. You only heard the sound, but then you interpreted that. And if you interpret that as a threat, what will happen? You might get frightened. Or if you interpret that as an insult, you might get angry. If you interpret that as a joke, then you might laugh. So according to how you interpret it, you react emotionally to that. So the emotion is different from that thought. And how is this emotion created? The message goes from the brain to a gland, and a gland circulates the hormone into the blood, and the blood carries the hormone to the whole body, and then the body begins to act in a certain way according to that hormone. And that is what you call the emotion. If it is anger, it is created by that hormone called adrenaline. Or it may be a sexual urge, then it is created by sexual hormone. So like that, different hormones begin to create different emotions, and the emotions begin to make you act in a certain way. If it is a desire, then the action is to get what you desire. If it is anger or hatred, then the action is to get rid of what you hate. If it is a fear, then the action is to run away from what you fear. So the action follows the emotion. So it's like a machine. So we are like what are called robots. We are like machines. But we have a different name. Biologists use a different name. They don't call it a machine. It's called an organism. So we have to understand that we are simply organisms, like all the animals, all the plants. We are all organisms working automatically according to how our senses are being stimulated. Our senses are being stimulated by whatever is going on in the environment. So we are organisms in an environment. When light falls on the eye, we see. When sounds come to the ears, we hear. When smells come to the nose, we smell. When taste comes to the tongue, we taste. When touches come to the body, we feel the touch. And that's how we go on. So it is very important to understand. But one very important thing is we have two things called mano and chitta. Chitta refers to the emotions and mano refers to the thinking, thoughts. But what happens very often is our chitta, which is the emotions, go in one direction and our thinking goes in another direction. Say I become angry with our friend here. What happens? I might want to hit him. But maybe my mind, thinking part says, no, that is not correct. You see, so that means the mind goes in two different directions. Very often we might want to eat something, but the one part, the chitta wants to eat something, but maybe the thinking part says no, because that is bad for you. If you like that, the mind begins to come in conflict. So especially when we live in society, which means we are living with other people, we have to be able to control these emotions. Even if we become angry, we should not be speaking harsh language or even going to fight. Because if we want to live in society, we have to behave in the proper way. And we can't be alone also. We can't get away from society and live alone. Because we need other people also. So that means we'll have to behave in the proper way. And if we don't behave in the proper way, what happens? Maybe that the police will come and catch us and punish us. So this is why there has been a thing called law in the world among civilized nations. To be civilized is to learn to behave. And that learning to behave is what is called sila. Have you heard that word? We have a thing called 5 precepts, observing the 5 precepts. What are the 5 precepts? You know what the 5 precepts are? 5 precepts simply mean how to behave in society. Not to hurt other people, not to harm other people. That is the first precept. But some people think the first precept is about not to kill animals. But it is not only not killing animals, not killing human beings also. Or not only not killing human beings, even hurting human beings or harming human beings in any way. It's mainly about our human relationships. and then also we should not harm other animals, because they are also animals, and human beings are also animals. So we should think that human beings are different from other animals, and it is okay for us to eat other animals, but we should not eat human beings. So very important to understand the 5 precepts. The first precept is based on, there is a thing that Jesus Christ said, do unto others as others, no. Do unto others, how is it?
As others do unto you. Do unto others as others do unto you.
No.
As others would.
Sure.
As others would do unto you.
Do unto others,
As others would do unto you.
but you don't want that. It's my mind. As you would have others do unto you.
Okay.
Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Now that the Buddha also said, that is called Attupanayika Dhamma Pariyaya. Attupanayika Dhamma Pariyaya means you compare yourself with others. I don't like if other people hurt me or harm me. So in the same way, others also will not like if I harm them or hurt them. So therefore, I will not hurt others. I don't like if some person steals from me or robs me. So in the same way, others will not like if I steal or rob from them. Therefore, I will not hurt others. In the same way, the third precept, I will not be happy if others have sexual misconduct. And in the same way, others will not be happy if I do the same. And therefore, I will not do any sexual misconduct. Or others, I will not like if others tell me lies. So in the same way, if I tell lies, others will not like that. And therefore, I will not tell lies. So like that, this is how the 5 precepts work. It is based on consideration for others. This is the important thing. The 5 precepts are based on consideration for others. It is not really based on punishment and reward. Now in other religions that they believe in gods who punish and reward and judge people, they speak about punishment and reward. That means you behave in a certain way, because if you don't behave in that way, you will be punished. Or if you behave in the good way, you will be rewarded. Now instead of thinking in terms of punishment and reward, we think in terms of consideration for others. And that is called metta. The Buddhist ethic is based on metta, not on punishment and reward. That's very important to understand. And Then of course, we go beyond these rules of living. We also want to gain control over our emotions. And therefore we begin to discipline our mind by thinking good thoughts. Like, may all beings be well and happy. Metta bhavana. And karuna, mudita and upekka. So these are very important things that we should learn. Today, I think this is quite enough that what we discussed. And maybe some other time we can talk about more things. But now I'll let you ask questions if you want. Do you have any questions to ask? Anything that was not clear? You don't have to be shy or frightened. You can ask anything you like. No question.
Buddhism was not based on punishment and reward.
What's that?
You said that Buddhism was a religion not based on punishments and rewards.
Yes.
What is power and pain?
What?
You know, power and pain?
Power and?
No, power and pain. When you do good things, you get pain. When you do bad things, power.
Didn't understand. But what you say?
He was saying that you know, saying that wisdom is based on not based on reward and punishment.
Yes.
How is that?
Yeah, it's just like how thinking that when you do good things, you
I get what you're saying.
yeah, karma.
So how is that related to, you know, if you do good things, you get ping, and if you do bad things, you get power and...
I see. Well, that is a good question. Now, we have this habit of talking about ping and power and karma and consequences of karma. That is not the right kind of Buddhism. You see, there are two levels of Buddhism. That means some people think of Buddhism as a punishment and reward religion. That is not correct. There is a story where during the time of the Buddha, there was a teacher called Nigantanath Buddha. He was also talking about karma. There are two words that you should learn, karma and vipaka. Karma is what you do, and vipaka means the consequences of the action, which is coming in the form of something bad happening to you or something good happening to you because of the action. So, karma and vipaka was what this Nigantanath Buddha was teaching. And so one day a disciple of Nigantanath Buddha came to the Buddha, and the Buddha asked, "What does your teacher teach you?" So he said, "This is what our teacher teaches. If you kill, you'll go to hell. If you steal, you'll go to hell. If you commit adultery, you'll go to hell. If you tell lies, you'll go to hell. If you take intoxicants, you go to hell. This is what our teacher teaches. Then the Buddha said, if that is what your teacher teaches, you'll all go to hell. Why? Because sometime or other you may have hurt another person. That means you'll go to hell. Or it may be that you stole something like maybe 5 cents or something like that. That means you go to hell. Or you may have told a lie or something and then you go to hell. So, he said, this is not how I teach my disciples. He said, this is how I teach. Harming others is not good. Therefore, refrain from harming or hurting others. Stealing is not good. Therefore, refrain from stealing. Adultery is not good. Therefore, refrain from adultery. Lying is not good. Therefore, refrain from lying. Taking intoxicants is not good. Therefore, refrain from taking intoxicants. And then they also cultivate the good thoughts like metta, karuna, mudita, and mukutta. And as a result, they are born in heaven. You see a difference in that teaching. What's the difference?
More of a guideline.
Huh?
More of a guideline.
What?
It's more of a guideline rather than.
No, it's not only that. It's that the Buddha is emphasizing the action and speaking about the goodness or the badness of the action. The other teacher is emphasizing the result or the consequence of the action. So this is the big difference. One is focusing on the consequences and the other is focusing on the action. Now today, many people in Sri Lanka, when they have some kind of trouble somewhere in their bad circumstances, they begin to say, oh, magi karma shamay kuni. And they begin to lament about it. They are not looking at the action, they are looking at the consequences and calling it karma. But what the Buddha says is, you don't have to worry about the consequences. You have to worry about the action. And therefore, you have to cultivate good action. If you have any bad consequences of previous bad action, you don't have to worry about it. Now start doing the good action. You see, as a result of bad actions in the past, you may be born as a poor person. But if you do the right actions now, you can become rich. If you do right things now. And if as a result of good actions, you became a rich person at the beginning, you were born in a rich family. But if you do the bad actions now, you lose all that riches and you become a poor person. So therefore the important thing is to look at the action more than the consequences. So that is the important thing that he emphasized. So in other words, the action, the goodness or the badness of the action is determined by your consideration for others. This is why the Buddhist way of ethics is mainly based on consideration for others rather than thinking of punishment and reward. So this is very important to understand. Even among the Buddhists, we have these wrong notions. So we should learn to think in the right way. Any other questions? No other questions, huh? You have one? No? Well, if you don't have any questions, we can stop here. We have been speaking for a little more than 1 hour. Huh? So I hope you understood what I said, and I hope that will help you to understand the teachings of the Buddha and also improve your life, and you have more happiness in your life if you follow the teachings of the Buddha. But I have only told you just a little. There are many other things that you should learn, and I hope you can benefit from that. And I think it is very important for every one of you to come to the temple more often and learn the Dhamma. And the Dhamma is about life, how to live your life. If you don't know the Dhamma, you will be losing a lot, and you will be making a lot of mistakes in life. And it's very important to understand that we are born ignorant, and if we don't learn the Dhamma, we will continue to live our lives in that ignorant way. And the important thing is that most of our actions are performed unconsciously, because all our emotions are going on unconsciously. If we become angry, it is happening unconsciously. And if we even get a desire, that is also unconscious. We are not doing anything. A desire is not something that we do, or anger is not something that we do. There is nothing to blame ourselves about it. We only have to become aware of it and correct ourselves. And that can be done only by that thinking part of the mind. We have to know that there are these two parts, the thinking part and an emotional part. The emotional part is unconscious, and the thinking part is the conscious part. Then we raise this custom of when we end discussion or sermon, we also share the merits with departed relatives. And we share the merits in that way by reciting Idamena Tina Yosu Sukita Mutina